Happy day, YouTube. My name is John, and this is my channel, The Intermancer. We are going to get to some more live coding in a minute, but first I have a few things that I need to talk about that I realized I needed to address as I was editing my last 4 videos, which I recorded all 4 of them at the same time. I've really been trying to have my videos be a little bit shorter, and part of that has been stopping it around the 30-minute mark. But as you know, if you do coding, sometimes you get into that zone, and it really is a fun thing that you want to keep going with. That certainly is the case with me. It certainly is the case with a lot of my peers. And so half an hour isn't really necessarily enough time to get a good fix, but it is plenty of time to expect someone to watch a video. So I will continue trying to cut my videos off at about the half-hour mark, even if I'm going to continue working or continue talking or continue programming or whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to try to keep the videos around half an hour. Also, those last 4 videos I was dealing with a lot of allergies, and that really came through. So if it seems like I was constantly sniffling for the last several videos, it's because I was recording all of them all at once. Now, something you've heard me say over and over again is that I am using these videos primarily as a learning experience for myself. That will continue to be true. So I will try to be good about sharing my thoughts, but please understand that what you're watching is my own personal learning experience. Now, as part of that, I've decided to be very comfortable with asking stupid questions, as I've mentioned a few times, and fiddling around with things that I'm either a complete noob at or things that I have known in the past and maybe haven't used in a while, even basic stuff. But this is very much a personal learning experience, and that is always going to be a messy thing. Along those lines of making this a personal learning experience, I am doing things the hard way. I'm not using all of the AI tools. I'm not using Code Complete. I haven't used Cursor or Windsurf or another IDE that's built into it. I do have Visual Studio Code with the Copilot so that I can ask some questions right there and easily refer to my code base. As you've seen in the last couple of videos, my workflow has been make changes in my IDE, push those up to GitHub, refresh my Claude project context, and then ask Claude what I need to do for the code, work with that a little till I've got the results that I want, copy those from Claude, and paste them into my code files. That is a little convoluted. It also really keeps me in the loop, as it were, where I'm forced to understand everything that happens, and I'm forced to be able to hold a conversation with the AI about every change that comes through. I expect this code base to eventually be large. It is not currently large, but much of my structuring decisions, like setting apart the organisms from or the organic material classes, setting that apart from the experimentation classes, is really part of my recognition of where I want this to go. I have a definite design in mind, but I haven't written that down anywhere. Maybe after I finish this current branch that I'm on, the JSON in and out branch, I'll take some time to jot down some images to share the design that I'm going for and where it's all headed. That being said, by and large, I have a good sense of it, and I'm kind of letting the actual manifest design arise up from the code as I work with it, trusting my own sense of where I want this code to eventually go and where I've taken it in the past. As I said way back at the beginning, this is my 3rd effort to make a genetic AI framework, and now I'm using it mostly as an excuse to learn how to use generative AI in my coding. That being said, I have done this a couple times, and I've been thinking about it so much over the years, over the decades. I've thought about it so much. And so I have a lot of opinions and expectations of where I think that this is going to go. So if you see some of those weird decisions as I'm coding, that might be where it's coming from. Okay. Now let's do a couple of things in the code that I wanted to talk about as I'm doing them. And I might be going back and forth to my notes and coming back to story time here in a little bit. The first thing that I wanted to point out was the way I have been trying to have consistency in my context documents. You saw that primarily where I was taking pains to make my experimentation.md file look as much as it could structurally to the way my organism domain objects.md context file looks, especially with the endpoints. I know I have some things that I could do better there, and some of that will show up as we continue to work. Part of the reason it's important to have a consistency of structure and a consistency between your context documents is an idea that I've referred to a few times that I think of as cognitive friction. You want the LLM to get comfortable and to know what to expect when it is incorporating your documents as it makes recommendations for your code. Expectations are key because the LLMs don't think. They use statistics to predict what the likely next few tokens or next few words or next few code symbols that they output are going to be based on what has come in the past. And if your various context documents are confused on that point or inconsistent, then you are less likely, the statistics are less likely to give you what you're looking for coming next. Also, when you ask the LLM to generate something for you, it does. I have not seen Claude or the ChatGPT 4, I think that's what the Copilot is using by default. I have not seen either one of those push back on my questions or my assignments. And I've seen at least one example where they have hidden my mistakes from me. I'd like to point that out. I actually highlighted this previously as a feature, not a bug, when I highlighted that the get organism repo list endpoint here was returning a list of organism IDs instead of a list of organisms. Now, I've since corrected the context document so that it says organism IDs in the description of the endpoint. But when I first wrote this, it was wrong. I had the repo here returning organism IDs, and I had not updated the endpoint, and it was saying return all organisms. But when the LLM generated the repository controller, main Java controller or organism controller, and it had the get all organism IDs, it was originally saying get all organisms, and it was returning just the IDs. Now, a human would probably, if they were good, go back and check with the person who is responsible for managing the requirements of the application and ask them, are you sure you want all of the organisms to come back from this endpoint? Because we can do that, but this repo method that you've defined earlier has just IDs, and that's inconsistent. If you want me to return all the organisms in the endpoint, I can do that. I'll just have to get the IDs and then loop through the controller, and for each ID, get the full organism. An LLM that was just being slavish would have done that for me. It would have seen that I asked for all organisms in the endpoint, but my repo was providing a list of IDs, and it would have looked through those IDs, creating all of the organisms. It didn't do either of those things. It didn't ask me for clarification, nor did it give me what I asked for. It was a very minor hallucination that at first I thought, well, that's kind of neat. It cleaned things up for me. But now, as I think about it more, I realized that that was a bug, not a feature. A human would have asked me for some more detail about what I was wanting the output to look like. A good human. That brings us to one of the biggest gotchas about these LLMs. All of the LLMs have been trained on the vast quantity of open source code or the huge amount of references available in Stack Overflow and several other sites. But most of the real life examples of coding tasks that a professional engineer is tasked to do don't have clear examples that do everything that you want it to do, because you're doing something in a particular code base with particular data structures, and you have to, as an engineer, bring all of these bits of information, all of these assumptions, all of these examples together to make something that works. The LLMs don't do that nearly as well as people so far. This is one of those things that I strongly suspect we're going to have vast improvements on in the next couple of generations of LLMs, or next couple of generations of generative models. I heard that Google has published another paper on a new architecture that promises to be just as disruptive as the transformer architecture was to give us ChatGPT in the first place. The last thing I want to talk about briefly before I move on to making actual changes in the code or in the context documents that I've been working on is a new document that I'm adding to the code base, which is this useful resources that I misspelled. So let me fix that right here. Rename. Useful resources. The thing that inspired me to include a document of useful resources was this YouTube video I saw by a gentleman who has called his channel The Coding Sloth. And I really liked this video. I liked the specifics, and it got me to look forward to when I feel like it's time for me to move over to windsurf. That's going to be exciting. But right now, I am still embracing the hard way. Okay, time to start looking at changes that we need to make. One of the things that I've gone back and forth on, maybe you caught it, maybe you didn't catch it, is that I was not being consistent either with myself or with the industry as a whole in how I was using the terms objects and classes. Classes are descriptions of something, of the class of things, and objects are specific instantiations of those things. So when I talk about things here in my context descriptions, like this, where I talk about domain objects, boom, 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 really I need to be saying domain classes. So I'm going to quickly change the headings in organism domain objects and experimentation in those context documents to standardize on classes and do some quick searches to get all of that shiny. And I'll probably fast forward through this or cut it out, but I'm going to do that real quick. So domain classes. And organism domain classes. this place, objects, I think it's appropriate you inject an instantiated object into an instantiated object when you are constructing the application context for your system. So I'm going to leave this one to be objects, even though I'm changing the rest of it to be classes. Okay, what about basic arithmetic genes? Okay, excellent, excellent. That's one cleanup task that I needed to do. Here's another one. You'll see here that these methods have a carriage return at the end of the method, and I noticed that the formatting between my Markdown preview pane here in Visual Studio Code is sometimes different from the Markdown from the presentation that gets generated over on GitHub. So this is another place where it's very important to be consistent in how you format things, how you format your context documents, how you structure your context documents, and the terminology that you use throughout your project. I'm going to go here. This is where I realized I had a problem. These methods should have carriage returns after them so that it matches other places in the code. Again, all of this is just cleanup. Now the endpoint here is fully specified. It's fully specified. So I don't think I need a carriage return here, but I do need to fix this egregious typo and put a slash right there. Okay. That's all the talking I wanted to do. And that's all the context cleanup that I noticed I needed to do in the course of editing the last few videos. Now we're going to move on to coding. If you'll remember, at the end of our last coding experience, we were going to, I need to start up my server, main, the application, start it going. Compiling, building. The build failed. That's interesting. Let us look at what failed. Clean the stale workspace and reload and delete. This is scary. Let's see what it does. As I've mentioned before, I'm new to Visual Studio Code. It's a little scary that it says reload and delete. What's that going to do? We're about to find out. Okay, it deleted the context, just started everything up, and now it is using the internal Gradle to reconfigure the project. That succeeded. Do we have any problems reported? No problems. Let's do the Gradle build just to make sure everything looks the way we expect it to. Build successful. Opening Java projects. What's it doing? Searching for what? What is it searching for? Okay, it's indexing everything. And it's done. Building, done. Any problems? No problems. Now can I start my server? I don't know why it's recompiling. It just told me it was it had compiled everything. There goes my server. Everything's running. My local host, Gaia F, experiment seed. Let's do that. And now localhost, Gaia F, organism, repost, simple arithmetic organism. There we go. This is where we were at the end of last episode. So it took me about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes to get back to here. Maybe 3 to get back to here. The next thing that I want to do is make this look pretty. You can see everything's basically on one line. Anyone who knows anything about JSON, and I don't know a whole lot about JSON, there's not a whole lot to know as far as I'm aware, but anyone who knows anything understands that it has this one inline presentation option, or you can pretty print your JSON to where it looks nice. And that's the next thing we're going to do. And we're going to lean into Copilot to do that. So close this, open this. The output for the organism for the endpoint is JSON on a single line. How do I make pretty? Make my server output pretty JSON. To make your Spring Boot output, ooh, lots of stuff. So let's go here. To make your Spring Boot server output pretty JSON, you can configure the object mapper used by Spring Boot to enable pretty printing. Right, the implicit object mapper that we found out about before. You can configure the object mapper used by Spring Boot to enable pretty printing. This can be done in the application.yaml file or by customizing the object mapper bean. Option 1, update application.yaml. This is what we're going to do. Add the following configuration to your application.yaml file. This will enable, okay, that is very pretty easy. So first I'm going to come over here, I'm going to stop my server, go to my resources, application.yaml, Spring, Jackson, serialization, apply in editor, sure, let's apply in editor. Should just add that. Oh, that is nice. Look at what it did. It recognized that I already had Spring at the top level and added just the piece that I didn't have. So that is definitely what we want to do. And also here on useful documents, I am going to add a new document about for testing links. MD. Testing links. These links are useful for testing a local server. So then I first want to put the seeding one. Experiment seed. Okay, that's the first one, then the second one. And save that. Go back here. Restart my server. Shrink that so it's out of the way. Restart my server. What? Restore my server. Let's continue. I don't think that was a problem. Now I am going to, real quick, okay, we'll execute this. For now, I'm going to stop this server. And I am going to here, first I got to clean this up, clean that up, clean that up, clean that, clear everything else. Start the server. Didn't give me an error that time. Come over here. Gaia F experiment seed. Do that. Then we will go to organism, repo, simple. There it is. All pretty. Simple arithmetic organism, chromosomes, genes. Excellent. Okay. All of that looks the way I want to. And I'm at 33 minutes on the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. But I'm going to keep recording the next one. Thank you.